to Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, May 15th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and today on the show, it's time to fire up the drop-o-meter for 7 potential drop candidates. We had some big pitching performances, and I'm stealing Adam Azer's old, hey, real quick, some quick pitching questions that I have for Scott. We'll get to that later on. Thanks for being with us. It's our latest start of the year. I realize that. Thank you for your patience. 5 games on the West Coast is just a killer for making the rundown. Those are my excuses for the night. But here we are. We appreciate you hanging out and being with us on this very late/early Wednesday morning. Let's jump in.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy!
All right, Scott, what made you go crazy here on Tuesday night or afternoon?
I am going to say the Aaron Nola shutout.
Oh, yeah.
Made me go crazy because it was a shutout, right? It was a shutout. Aaron Nola is doing his even year thing, which is pitch like an ace. And this was maybe, it was obviously his most impressive start. Struck out 8, walked none. But beyond that, beyond the fact it was a complete game shutout, his velocity was up 1 to 1.7 miles per hour on his top 3 pitches, which basically returned it to last year's levels. His velocity was down early in the year. He was succeeding in spite of it. His velocity was basically back to normal in this start. And I think that's encouraging because I wasn't totally buying the success Aaron Nola, the even year success Aaron Nola was having. And I know I've long been an Aaron Nola apologist, and I don't know that I ever had a chance to voice my concerns on the podcast prior to this shutout, but his swinging strike rate this year has been pitiful, below 9%. His expected ERA, his FIP, his xFIP, all virtually identical to last year when he was doing his odd year Aaron Nola thing, which is not pitched like an ace. So I thought the success he was having might be a little bit phony. If this velocity holds here with this complete game shutout, if he keeps getting whiffs at the rate he did in this start, then I think those concerns are going to dissipate for me, and I can get more behind the idea that Aaron Nola is a fantasy ace and not just a high-end pitcher who's less than an ace, which is what I worried he was.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the same things here, Scott. The velocity being back up closer to where it was last year for Aaron Nola, the swinging strike rate being down as much as it was heading into this start, but he did have 13 swinging strikes on 109 pitches here. It was a 4-hit shutout, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks at the New York Mets. And just quickly peeking at the rankings, which I will be updating in full force on Wednesday. And you have Aaron Nola as your SP13. I have him at 16. So we're kind of in the same range. Maybe I'll push him back up a little bit, but I think that's probably the right spot. He's like a high-end SP2. That is Aaron Nola, and that was a fantastic start. Another fantastic start came from Reese Olson, who was awesome, but it came against the Miami Marlins. So you put a little asterisk next to this one, but he's pitched really well recently, and in this start, it was 8 shutout innings, 3 hits, 0 walks, 6 strikeouts, with 13 swinging strikes on 96 pitches for Reese Olson. He's allowed 2 earned runs or less in 7 of his 8 starts so far this season. He's down to a 2.09 ERA, a 1.01 WHIP, 2.55 FIP. The xFIP is a little bit higher. It says there has been some home run luck so far this season, but gets a lot of ground balls. I wish the strikeout rate was a little bit higher, Scott, but overall, it's been a really, really nice start to the season for Reese Olson. He is 60% rostered. What did you see? And do you think he should just be a must roster pitcher at this point?
I mean, I've been saying that for a long time. I think the reason Reese Olson isn't is because he doesn't have a win yet. He's had very bad run support for having an ERA in the low 2s. And I think people are just looking at those point totals and in head-to-head leagues and saying, yeah, this guy's not so great. But Reese Olson has been pitching really well. Quick clarification before I get into Olson more. I think you gave my points league, my head-to-head points ranking for Aaron Nola, 13th among starting pitchers. It's actually 15th in Roto. So I have him behind Freddie Peralta and Dylan Cease in that format. So that's where I stand on Nola. As for Olson, as well as he has pitched, as much as I like him, the 2.09 ERA is too good to be true. That maybe goes without saying, but specifically, he hasn't allowed a home run yet, and he will allow a home run, several home runs at some point. That'll bring that ERA up. Having said that, he probably won't allow a ton of home runs because he has a 55% ground ball rate. He has a top 10 type ground ball rate. He has a great whiff rate on the changeup and slider, which has always been true for Reese Olson since we saw him late last year. And he looks really good. I would make a sell high case for him, except that he's already being undervalued and because he doesn't have a win yet. So I think you just pick him up where he's available. You just write him out where you already have him.
Again, that is Reese Olson. Two other names that could be available in shallower leagues. Gavin Stone is all the way up to 77% rostered, but he turned in another quality start here. He was at the Giants. He threw 6 innings of 1-run ball, more walks than strikeouts, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, but did have 11 swinging strikes on 90 pitches. Again, that is Gavin Stone. He's turned in 4 straight quality starts, allowing exactly 1 earned run in each. And Eric Fedde, dominant once again against the Nationals. He threw 7 shutout, only allowed 3 hits, 6 strikeouts to 0 walks, only had 6 swinging strikes in this one. Feels like Fedde is constantly tinkering, Scott, from each start to the next. And, you know, in this one, he led with the sinker and the cutter. I think that's why the swinging strikes were down a little bit more, but they have been down each of the past 3 starts. That hasn't mattered because Fedde has now allowed 2 earned runs or less in 7 of his 9 starts, and he's down to a 2.60 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP. How would you rank those 3? Fedde, Olson, and Gavin Stone.
I'm going to go Gavin Stone 1. I guess I got to go Fedde over. I'm sorry. I'm going to rank Reese Olson 1. I guess I'm going to go Fedde over Stone. But I don't feel great about it. I don't. For being somebody who was especially high on Fedde coming into the season, I don't really understand how he's succeeding now. He's leaned a lot on the cutter, especially, and doesn't miss any bats with that pitch. The ones that were hyped with his new arsenal that he picked up prior to going to the Korean League last year, the ones that we were hyping up were the split change and the sweeper, and those have been kind of MIA for Fedde this whole time. He's now down to a 2.60 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP. His FIP, though, is 3.89. His xFIP is 3.58. His expected ERA, it's not updated after the start, but it's similar. It's mid to high 3s. So by all 3 measures there, he's overperforming. And I think if you just look on a more granular level at what Eric Fedde's doing, not getting a ton of strikeouts, not an especially good control pitcher, not an especially good ground ball pitcher like he was in the Korean League last year. Just kind of pretty middle of the road there as far as ground ball rate goes. Not giving up especially weak contact. Not really doing anything that would signal Eric Fedde is like a great pitcher. Could he be I don't know. Could he be that mid to high 3 ERA guy? Yeah, I could see that. And I think he'll be streamable at times because of that. But if you are a mid to high 3s ERA guy with less than a strikeout per inning on a team as bad as the White Sox, what is that going to add up to for fantasy? And I don't think it's going to add up to much. So Eric Fedde looks like a pretty strong sell high case to me. And, it'd have to be a league on the deeper side, I think, to get anything of real value for him. But I don't think he's going to be able to keep this up. Nothing underlying the actual 2.60 ERA suggests he could. And the bad team, the bad supporting cast makes it even worse. As for Gavin Stone, we've been harping on how maybe he doesn't have anything but the changeup to work with, and so that might limit his upside. Well, he got 5 of his 11 whiffs in this start at San Francisco on the changeup, but he got 4 on the slider, which he threw 21% of the time, twice as often as usual. So he hardly uses the slider 10% normally. Threw it 21% of the time this time, got whiffs with it. It actually has a better whiff rate this year than the changeup. It has a better than a 40% whiff rate. So maybe the key to unlocking Gavin Stone's potential is going to be mixing in that slider more. And maybe this is the start of it. Obviously, he has a great supporting cast, opposite ends of the spectrum from Fetty as far as that goes. So that's why I'm kind of tempted to put Stone ahead of Fetty when I'm ranking these two. But for now, I'll go ahead and say Fetty over Stone.
I noticed the same thing with the slider for Gavin Stone. The biggest problem for me is that the strikeout to walk ratio is bad. It's flat out bad for Gavin Stone. 7.1% K minus walk rate. That's after this start, ranks 78th among 81 qualified starting pitchers for Gavin Stone. And his xFIP is 445. I think there's going to be a regression with him. The biggest difference, which you spoke about with Fetty, is that Gavin Stone could pitch not so great and still wind up with a good amount of wins just because he pitches for the Dodgers. And we've seen that with James Paxton, who I think still has more walks than strikeouts on the season, and he's been racking up wins with the Dodgers as well. So if that's something that you're looking to chase, I totally get going after Gavin Stone over someone like Fetty, but I do agree that Reese Olson would be at the top of the list.
I will say that bad strikeout to walk ratio for Stone is mostly because the strikeout rate is low. And it's weird that the strikeout rate is so low given how much he misses bats, given what Stone's swinging strike rate is. Maybe it's because he has so many of those swinging strike rates. So many of those swinging strikes come on the changeup, and it makes him too predictable in 2 strike counts. He's not able to put hitters away. That's why I'm hoping bringing in the slider more will change that for Gavin Stone. Because if it does, we could see a surge in strikeouts for him.
I think that would help the strikeout rate. I would push back a little bit in that I think the walk rate is still high, though. 3.3.
Yeah. It's manageable, though. It's mostly like a 3.1 walks per 9, or I'm sorry, let me look at the updated stats. 3.3 walks per 9 isn't as bad to me as 5.9 Ks per 9.
Yeah, I think that is a fair assessment there on Gavin Stone. A quick reminder that if you are listening, you can always listen and follow on Spotify. You can find both Fantasy Baseball Today and our 5-minute podcast, FBT and 5, on Spotify. If you're watching live, you can scan the QR code that will take you right to the Fantasy Baseball Today Spotify page. And again, thanks to everyone watching us live. Make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll get into the news and notes here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
PGA Championship on the Range tees off Thursday on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back in the news and notes. We haven't had one of these in a while, Scott. Ronel Blanco was ejected Tuesday because of a foreign substance on his glove, which means he'll also be hit with a 10-game suspension. So you will not be using Ronel Blanco in your lineups next week. And I always wonder how pitchers bounce back from something like this. If there's some kind of mental hurdle, or I don't know. It's just always kind of a weird situation with these foreign substance things.
Was it driving his success? I think is the biggest question.
Fair.
And I don't know. I mean, he was pointing out to the umpire that there was nothing sticky on his fingers. And I looked at the data from this start. It's not like his spin rates were way up or anything like that, which means either it was in his glove, but he wasn't really using it, or it doesn't mean this. I guess it would suggest that it was in his glove and he wasn't really using it, or that he's been using it all along. And that's partly why he's exceeded expectations to this point. What do you do with that suspicion? I don't know. I mean, I would have called Ronel Blanco a sell high prior to this start because he was overperforming. I think we've made that clear. Well worth rostering, but not going to be able to sustain his current pace. In light of this news, I don't know that you could call him a sell high anymore. I don't know that anyone's going to be eager to buy. And in fact, I might look to buy actually if the cost is reasonable, if the cost is, somebody on the back end of my pitching staff or a bench bat or something like that. Just if somebody is going to presume, okay, this has been the whole key to Blanco's success, I just want to use this as an opportunity to get rid of him before he totally collapses. Maybe he does. That's why the cost would have to be reasonable. But I think just given the sentiment surrounding Blanco in the aftermath of this, you're more likely to get a discount buying than a good return selling.
Bryce Harper was out of the lineup with a migraine, but is expected back on Wednesday. His teammate JT Realmuto is also expected back Wednesday after missing 3 games with knee soreness. Austin Riley has now missed 2 straight with left side inflammation. Blake Snell's next rehab start will come Friday at AAA. Nico Horner was scratched from the lineup due to left hamstring tightness. Royce Lewis did some light running on the field Tuesday. He'll do more aggressive change of direction things later in the week, and that will give more insight to the timeline for his rehab assignment. Evan Carter received a cortisone injection in his back and could rejoin the Rangers' late lineup on Friday. Bobby Miller will throw 2 simulated innings on Wednesday. If all goes well, Miller will either move on to a sim game or a rehab assignment. He's on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. Both George Springer and Justin Turner were out of the lineup again with that illness that's been hampering the Blue Jays. Zach Geloff was reinstated and in the lineup at second base for the Oakland A's. He is down to 73% rostered. Scott, would you be looking to add Zach Geloff if he was dropped? My guess is he's probably only available in shallower points leagues.
Yeah, and that's the format where I wouldn't be so interested in adding him unless I just, I was basically screwed at second base and was looking for any upside I could find there. But outside of that, Geloff was off to a terrible start. He strikes out a lot anyway, which doesn't make him so viable in points leagues. He would kind of need to deliver his best case outcome to overcome that strikeout rate for points leagues. And I'm not willing to bet on that at this point. But if he happens to be out there in any categories leagues, for sure, pick him up.
In my home league, it's a 12-team head-to-head points league, but we use roto-style lineups. I think my second baseman and middle are Nolan Gorman and Zach Neto. I have
probably should pick
injuries. I actually had to drop Geloff because we only have 3 IL spots, so I'm probably going to pick him back up in a league like that. Imaging revealed structural damage in Jung-Hoo Lee's left shoulder. He'll receive a second opinion from Dr. Neil Elatraj on Thursday. Reese Hoskins was placed in the IL with a right hamstring strain. Owen Miller was recalled from AAA. Evan Phillips will throw a bullpen on Wednesday. He's on the IL with a strained right hamstring. Patrick Bailey was placed back on the 7-day concussion IL, retroactive to Sunday. Here's a name we haven't heard in a while. Noelvi Marte has been able to play in exhibition games in Arizona during his suspension. And Scott, when would you be looking to add Noelvi Marte, who is eligible to return on June 19th?
Now, I actually have some roto leagues, I guess on the deeper end, like Tout Wars, where around 450 players are rostered. And I think in the Podcast for the People League, which is a 16-team league, 22 players per team. So that's around 350 players rostered. I think I've already been stashing Noelvi Marte in those leagues. And obviously I'm going to try to hold on. Shallower points leagues where you want to use all your bench space on pitchers, obviously it's not worth occupying a bench spot for another 5 weeks, but anything deeper, again, 350 plus players rostered, especially if you need help at third base. I think now's when you need to make a play for Noel Marte.
Jonathan Aranda was activated by the Rays and was not in the lineup against the right-handed pitcher. They opted for Isaac Paredes at DH with Ahmed Rosario at third and Richie Palacios at second. Scott, I know that you are the biggest supporter of Jonathan Aranda, but I don't love this. I mean, against the righty, he's not in the lineup.
No, but he came off the bench and got 2 at-bats. Played third base, so maybe he'll pick up eligibility at that position unexpectedly. Has also seen time at second base and first base in the past. So I'm excited about his return. A lot of people were tweeting at me about it. I don't want to oversell it. Like somebody was asking me if he was a viable replacement at first base. And I don't think he is right now, unless it's a very deep league. There's probably somebody better. Like we don't know how Jonathan Aranda is going to perform. His minor league numbers are ridiculous. And I'm not just talking about the slash line, the forward-facing numbers. I'm talking exit velocities. I'm talking plate discipline. It all looks amazing for Jonathan Aranda, which is why I'm so enthusiastic for him. But his previous stints in the majors have gone very poorly, and he doesn't have a job all to himself. And he might be out of the lineup a lot of times against left-handers. So it's more of a, okay, he's back, so let's scout what he does closely situation. It's more that situation than, okay, he's back, so let's get him in our lineups, you know? And especially since the rehab assignment went pretty poorly for Aranda. He was striking out a lot. It was uncharacteristic for him. I'm surprised he got activated when he did. I'm not sure he has his timing down yet. So that's concerning because, you know, at 26 now, I guess he is, and already having gotten the chances he's gotten. How many more chances will he get? I don't know that I like the idea that they're calling him up when he doesn't appear to have his timing down. I mean, maybe they have better ways of gauging that than I do. But I'm a little concerned about that aspect for Aranda too, as excited as I am about him in general.
The Mets will recall Mark Vientos on Wednesday. It sounds like he'll work in a platoon with Brett Beatty at third base. And Michael Soroka has been moved to the White Sox bullpen. Brad Keller will take his spot in the rotation. Let's fire up the drop-o-meter. 10 on the drop-o-meter means you could be dropped in any size league. 1, you probably want to hold on to that player. And we will start with 2 pitchers. Reid Detmers is first up. He's still 76% rostered. Another rough outing here against the Cardinals where he allowed 5 runs. 4 of those were earned over 5 innings. He still had 7 strikeouts, still had 17 swinging strikes. And over his last 5 starts, Reid Detmers has an 8.46 ERA, a 1.66 whip. I still remain, the underlying numbers still look really good. I get there is no way you could play Reid Detmers right now, but Scott, what do we do? The drop-o-meter, Reid Detmers.
Yeah, I'm going to put it at like a 2.
Oh, wow.
Is that, should it be even lower?
No. I
too high?
I thought it was going to be higher. No. I thought it was going to be higher.
It would have to be a very shallow league for me to consider dropping Detmers because the talent level, I believe, is so high. And it would, the only scenario where I drop Detmers is just I've accumulated a lot of quality pitching already because there's been a lot available on waivers throughout the year, and somebody's getting forced out. And it pains me to do it, but Detmers is the one getting forced out. That's the scenario in which I drop him, which again would have to be a pretty shallow league.
Would you drop him for any of the pitchers we mentioned earlier? Stone, Fetty, Olson.
I'd consider it with Olson, but not the other 2. It'd be a close call, Detmers and Olson. I think it would partly depend on how much trouble I was having filling out my lineup. Because as you say, it's hard to trust Detmers in your lineup right now.
I believe over the weekend said that we would drop Detmers for Christian Scott, who is still available in a quarter of CBS leagues. Yep. Would you drop Reid Detmers for Taj Bradley, who had a strong debut? Nope. No. Okay. Nope. Let's move over to Aaron Savali, who was still 75% rostered. He was at the Red Sox where he allowed 3 runs over 5 innings. He still did have 6 strikeouts, only 2 swinging strikes. Don't love that. And over Savali's last 5 starts, It's an 8.87 ERA, a 171 WHIP. As I was writing all of this down, all my notes for Savali, I just kept thinking to myself, Scott, I've got to give it up. I've got to give up the Savali thing because I just, it's like fetch. I'm trying to make Savali happen, and it has not been happening. So where would you put him on the drop-o-meter?
Pretty high. Let's say 8 on the drop-o-meter for Savali, but I don't think he's rubbish, to use a British term. Garbage seems a little harsh. I'm saying he's not that, so maybe it's not harsh. I don't think he's like useless for fantasy. I think he's a fine streamer, and that's basically what he's been to this point in his career. It should be clear by now that the Rays aren't going to work their Rays magic on him and turn him into a top of the rotation type, which is I think what you meant when you said letting him go, giving him up.
Yeah, I was of the belief that Savali could have this Zach Eflin type season from last year, and that has not happened so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I don't think it will, but I think as a streamer type, as a Dean Kramer, use him when the matchups are good and he's in line for 2 starts, especially in a points league. I think Savali is fine for that purpose, but that makes him pretty expendable.
Yeah. I do think there will be some regression the other way for him. His home run rate is very high. His left on base percentage is very low. So again, there will be some positive movement here for Savali, but not really somebody I would want to start right now. Let's get into some of the hitters. And I've got some big names on this list, Scott. All of them had a sub 600 OPS entering Tuesday's action. And we're about 6 weeks into the season now. Paul Goldschmidt, where are we at? He did go 2 for 5 with his second stolen base here on Tuesday, but the strikeouts are a huge problem. 32% strikeout rate. The zone contact is a career low. The swinging strike rate is a career high. These are all the things you do not want to see from an aging player, someone of Paul Goldschmidt's caliber. Where is he on the drop-o-meter? I mean, can you consider it in a shallower format?
Maybe. I guess I'll go 2 because I think there is a circumstance that exists where dropping Goldschmidt is possible. It would have to be a very shallow league, of course. And in anything deeper than that, let's say a 12-team head-to-head league, I feel like you're kind of handcuffed to him, and that's frustrating. But you risk losing too much by dropping him at this point. I don't think freeing up that bench spot is worth it in a league where there isn't constantly new talent emerging that is high end. Yeah. So I'm discouraged by everything I'm seeing. I had Goldschmidt as a bust pick coming in, so it's affirming my fears for him. He's even worse against the fastball this year, and I think that may be the clearest indication of aging happening for Paul Goldschmidt. But he is Paul Goldschmidt. We've seen him. We've written him off before when he's had a miserable start to the year, and he came back with MVP caliber numbers. And so I think you have to give him a long leash here. When can we give up?
We usually say Memorial Day, right? I mean, the end of this month.
I maybe in a few more leagues, maybe he'll go from a 2 to 4 on the drop-o-meter at that point. But in leagues where you have a corner infield spot to fill, I think you need to hold on even longer than that.
Yeah, it's a sunk cost, but I agree with you. There's not really much else. I think you could stick him on the bench for now. You can play the matchups with, maybe pick up a first baseman and just play the matchups, or try and buy on another name right now, someone like a Vinny Pasquantino or a Yandy Diaz, who's kind of off to Vinny P's picking things back up a little bit, but try and acquire one of those names and just ride with them until hopefully Goldschmidt picks it up. But
I want to give the specifics on this. I said he's even worse against the fastball this year. So hopefully I cite swinging strike rate enough that you have a frame of reference for it. 12% is really good. 13, 14%, you're going to be among the league leaders. This is for pitchers. Paul Goldschmidt's swinging strike rate on fastballs, the pitcher going to swing and miss on least often, 19%.
Oh, that's like every fastball
Is Spencer
he's
Strider to him.
It's kind of like Jared Jones this season.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not good.
That's a problem.
Let's slide over to Gleyber Torres, who is batting .214. He's got 2 home runs, 3 steals, a .569 OPS. Where is Gleyber Torres on the drop-o-meter?
I haven't looked into him in a while, but my presumption is he'll just, slow start. He hasn't fundamentally changed as a player. Let's see. His strikeout is up quite a bit from last year, but it is in line with career norms, more or less. Last year was an outlier for strikeout rates. He doesn't have a max exit velocity on the level he's used to yet. That's a little concerning. But at the same time, he has a long track record of being a solid fantasy option. He's only 27 years old. I'll go 3.5 on Gleyber Torres. And it's really just, again, those shallow league contexts where you have a great option at second base already. So you really just don't want him occupying a spot on your bench.
Let's get into 3 outfielders. George Springer, who I mentioned has missed the past couple days due to illness, is batting .200 with 3 homers, 6 steals. So still kind of helping out a little bit with power and speed, but it's a .563 OPS. He is now up to 34 years old. This could be the beginning of the end here for George Springer. Scott, where is he on the drop-o-meter?
Well, outfield being as shallow as it is, I think that has to factor in.
Yeah.
He has not hit a ball nearly as hard. Like his max exit velocity last year was almost 116 miles per hour, and he's only hit one 110. That's his hardest hit ball this year, which doesn't mean he couldn't have a harder hit ball going forward. But usually by now, you've pretty much met your max exit velocity. I will say George Springer. Let's put him at a 3.
Okay, what about Jackson Chourio? We've talked about him a lot recently, losing playing time. He's batting .210. Again, still chipping in power and speed. 4 homers, 6 steals, a .579 OPS, striking out quite a bit. Where is Jackson Chourio on the drop-o-meter? I feel like in a 3 outfielder points league, we might be there with Jackson Chourio.
Yeah, I think so. Probably about a 4. Mostly just in that format. 5 outfielder leagues, no chance I'd drop him, but 3 outfielder leagues. I'd have to feel pretty good about the 3 starters I have, but I think it's more likely Chourio gets sent down than that he's allowed to struggle for the next 2 weeks. Like if Memorial Day, he's just continued to do this. He's continued to be in and out of the lineup. He'll probably just get sent down at that point, I would guess.
Last name is Cedric Mullins, who does have 6 homers and 6 steals. The batting average is down to 185 with a .592 OPS. How do you feel about Cedric Mullins on the drop-o-meter?
I think he's pretty droppable in a points league. So let's put him right at a 5. Yeah, he was the first 3.
Oh, it's time for Robo Scott to make an appearance.
Yeah, a little later than usual.
Yeah, we lasted 35 minutes in. That's not bad.
I know. I told them. I talked to my cable company today and told them it was pretty much all done at 1:30. The interruption stopped by that point, and here it is, 1:33, and it's happening. So I lied. They're not going to be able to diagnose this problem now. I blew it. I blew my chance.
What about Cedric Mullins? Did he blow his chance?
I mean,
How about this? If you play in a 3 outfielder points league, would you be all right dropping any of Springer, Churio, or Mullins for, let's say, your top sleeper hitter of the week? Someone like a Max Kepler on a given basis, or like a Brent Rooker before, when he was still available.
Mullins, I'd be fine doing that. Chorio, if it was a matter of like I'm for sure starting this player and I can't start Chorio, then yeah, I could see doing that. George Springer, probably not.
All right, let's take our final.
Hopefully the numbers I gave line up with that.
Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll get into the rest of the waiver wire options. We'll do that right after this.
Two big boys getting ready to play. Big being the operative word here. And here they come.
Welcome back in. We spoke about the big waiver wire pitcher names earlier on: Gavin Stone, Reese Olson, and Eric Fetty. A couple other names that pitched decently well. Jose Butto was fine, but the walks continue to be a problem. 5 innings, 1 hit, 2 runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts, had 10 swinging strikes on 97 pitches. Butto has a 3.08 ERA and a 1.13 whip. Trevor Williams was solid again at the White Sox in game 1 of their doubleheader. 5 innings, 3 runs, only 1 of those was earned. He had 2 strikeouts and has now allowed 1 earned run or less in 6 of 8 starts, but has only completed 6 innings once this season. So lots of 5-inning outings for Trevor Williams. Ryan Weathers was great at the Tigers. He threw 8 shutout innings with 3 hits, 0 walks, and 4 strikeouts. Only 5 swinging strikes in that one. And Michael Wacha with a much-needed strong start at the Mariners, where he allowed just 1 run over 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, with 10 swinging strikes. That's back-to-back quality starts for Michael Wacha. Scott, any interest in this group? Wacha, Weathers, Trevor Williams, and Jose Butto.
I mean, Wacha is probably going to improve because he has so much improving to do. I'm leaning toward the last 2 years being kind of fluky for him, and that the mean that he's regressing to is more like that Aaron Savale, Dean Kramer class of pitcher, where streamable in the right matchups, but definitely not must roster. So having said that, Wacha is probably the most valuable of this group. Butto, his walk rate is 5 per 9 now. 5 walks per 9 innings. And I wonder if he could get the Butto once, or if he's close to. I don't think he's pitched his way out of the rotation yet. He's kept runs off the board well enough, but they have Tyler McGill coming back. Hopefully they have Kodai Senga coming back before too long. And I'm not sure Butto will be worth keeping in the rotation once everybody's right. So that's something to keep in mind with him. Ryan Weathers, I want to point this out for him because his ERA is down to 3.81 now to go with a 1.17 whip. Pretty good numbers, all things considered. But that's to go along with a 4.57 FIP and a 4.45 xFIP. Just not enough strikeouts. And it's kind of strange because the whiff rate on his main secondary offerings, the changeup and the sweeper, are both really good. 38% whiff rate on the changeup, 55% whiff rate on the sweeper. I just think he throws his fastball too much, and his fastball doesn't miss bats at all. So if Ryan Weathers were to really lean into those off-speed pitches, he may be onto something. But with his current approach, I'm skeptical he can keep that ERA south of 4.
2 names in deeper leagues. Joe Ross pitched well against the Pirates. He allowed 2 runs over 5 innings. He had 6 strikeouts and 21 swinging strikes for Joe Ross. Pretty awesome start for him there. And Cal Quantrill has quietly pitched very well. The problem is that he plays for the Rockies. He was at the Padres, where he allowed 1 run over 6 innings. He had 5 strikeouts, only 6 swinging strikes. But Quantrill has now allowed 1 earned run or less in 5 of his past 6 starts. He's down to a 3.66 ERA that comes with a 1.32 whip. These are deeper league options, Scott, but are you looking to add any of them in any of your 15-team leagues? Joe Ross, Cal Quantrill.
No, I'm not. But both are doing something kind of interesting that I'll take the time to mention here. Joe Ross, the 21 whiffs in this start. Okay, that's that. It's not going to be that good very often, but for the year, I believe this puts him at better than a 12% swinging strike rate so far, which, as I mentioned earlier in the program, is good. That's a good swinging strike rate. It's the best of his career. I wonder if it'll continue for Joe Ross. But as of now, it's just a curious development and no reason to show interest in him in fantasy. And Cal Quantrill's managed to keep his ERA respectable despite pitching half his games in cores. And the way he's done that, I think, is he's basically just abandoned his breaking balls, which is probably the way you have to pitch if you're going to pitch half your games at Coors Field, because they don't break enough to have their effectiveness. And then if you try to recapture that on the road, it's going to be a problem for you. So just do away with them. He's basically going with the fastball and the splitter, and it's working well enough. It's working as well as it can for somebody like Cal Quantrill.
Let's slide over to the waiver wire hitters, and two names between 50 and 60% rostered. Abraham Toro just continues to rack up the hits right now. 2 for 5 with a double and a run scored. He is now batting .295 with the Oakland A's. He's got an .800 OPS. He's led off in 8 straight games. And Connor Joe has now homered in 3 straight. That's right. My Connor Joe, 1 for 3 with his 6th home run. He is batting .293 with a .370 on base percentage, 24 runs scored this year, 21 RBI, .890 OPS. He's started 8 of the past 10 games. Connor Joe is 53%. Abraham Toro is 55. Do you think either of those numbers need to be higher
than 55 and 53? No, I think that's about right. 15-team roto leagues, they probably have to be rostered at this point. But I don't have a ton of confidence in either sustaining the numbers they're putting up right now. Connor Joe has a .228 expected batting average and a .389 expected slug. Now, maybe he's just doing such a good job of pulling the ball in the air. He's doing that Isaac Paredes trick that maybe he can keep it going, but we don't have a track record of that for him, and it's a small sample right now. I'm not ready to say Connor Joe is a unicorn after a 7-week sample of part-time at-bats at that. So in the long run, I'm not sure he'll be worth rostering, but in those deeper roto leagues, he is for now.
I will point out with Connor Joe, that pull rate is up. It's a career high 49.5%. So it looks like he's actively trying to pull fly balls, and that might be helping him. But as you mentioned, it is a smaller sample size for him so far this season. Two names that are right around 30% rostered, Sal Frelick and Andrew Vaughn. Sal Frelick had a big game, 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe, his first home run, his 5th stolen base of the season. The problem for him is that we thought he was going to take this step as a contact hitter, hitting for lots of line drives and batting average and kind of a Steven Kwan type. And Sal Frelick has not taken that step so far. Andrew Vaughn had a big game in game 2 of their doubleheader. He went 2 for 3 with a double dong, 4 RBI. Even after this game, he is batting just .211 with a .600 OPS. I think it's a good game for 2 young players, Scott, but we need to see a lot more before we consider adding either one.
Yeah, Frelick has been a disappointment for me so far. I may have dropped him in the Memorial Magazine League, which is 12-team roto, 5 outfielder spots.
I dropped him in a 15-team, 5 outfielder league.
Oh, wow. You must have been in good shape.
I do have some pretty good options, yeah. I'm
running in second place in the Memorial Magazine League and have a lot of good outfielders for it being a 5. It was one of those situations, players coming back off the IL, I got to drop somebody.
Scott.
I went ahead and
Scott.
So I went ahead and dropped Sal Frelick. Vaughn, let's talk about Vaughn for a second, because a lot of the data for him seems pretty normal. The main thing that sticks out to me why he entered the day with 1 home run and now is up to only 3. Pull rate is way down this year. It wasn't good to begin with, but it's down to 31% this year versus 39% last year. So he's just not optimized. His swing just isn't optimized for power. And maybe it never was, but it's been especially bad this year. And, considering he's in the White Sox lineup, I'm not sure he's worth waiting around for.
Just to add some context to that 15-team, 5 outfielder league where I dropped Sal Frelick, my outfield is currently Josh Lowe, Seiya Suzuki, Lars Nootbaar, Andy Pages, Tommy Pham. I also have Brenton Doyle and Johnny DeLuca on the bench. So I feel pretty good.
I would have dropped some of those guys over Frelick myself, but fair enough.
I know you hate Tommy Pham, Scott. You're never going to like him no matter what.
Yeah, Tommy Pham's one.
He's a lot more useful than Sal Frelick right now.
You obviously don't need him in your lineup. I don't know why you'd have such confidence in him long term.
Yeah, I have Doyle. I have Doyle on the bench. I like to just play him whenever he's in Coors Field. And Johnny DeLuca, I think it's a lottery ticket. I think he has more upside than from what we've seen from Sal Frelick. He might have more upside. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Maybe I'll regret it. Who knows?
Yeah.
A couple other names in deeper leagues. Trey Lipscomb in game 1 of their doubleheader went 3 for 3 with a walk and 3 stolen bases. He is now up to 10 on the season. Wenceel Perez continues to hit for the Detroit Tigers. He added 2 more hits today. He's batting over 300 with 3 homers, 3 steals, and 892 OPS. Nick Gonzalez hit his first home run since being recalled by the Pirates. He went 1 for 3 in that game. He has started 4 of the past 5 games. He's got 1 homer and 1 steal so far. And Alec Burleson, Scott, someone I know that you have fancied for quite some time, went 3 for 5 with a sock and a shoe. His 4th home run, his first stolen base. He has started 6 of the past 7 games. Very deep league stuff here. But any interest in Burleson, Nick Gonzalez, Wenceel Perez, and Trey Lipscomb?
Yes, especially Wenceel Perez. I'm kind of surprised he's only 25% rostered. I guess the playing time has been a bit sporadic, but he's his eligibility is kind of all over the place depending on what site you're on. Some places I've seen just outfield only. Some places he seems to have second base as well. Some he seems to have shortstop as well. And there's an element of speed there. He's been hitting well so far. Yeah, I have him in a couple of 15-teamers where I needed help in the outfield. And then Burleson, I'm not ready to pick him up in those same leagues where I was picking up Wenceel Perez, but he still hits the ball very hard on average, and he still doesn't strike out much. And if this is the breakout, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me. Let's see if the playing time continues. Let's see if the batting average continues to rise. I think a big part of his profile is going to have to be batting average because I doubt he has like 30 homer upside. But with the 27% drive rate, that with Burleson doing that and striking out as little as he does, I think a high batting average is distinctly possible. His expected batting average is 80th percentile.
Mm-hmm. Again, that is Alec Burleson, and I think there's a chance. The Cardinals are desperate for offense. So if Burleson could give them anything, then he is going to stick in the lineup. He's a name. Let's just see where it goes. But in some of those deeper 5 outfielder leagues, he's someone you might want to add. That is Alec Burleson. Last chance. What is it the last chance to do? It might be your last chance to buy low on Matt Olson, who went 2 for 3 with his 5th home run, added 4 RBI here on Tuesday. And it might be your last chance to sell high on Anthony Volpe, who is bouncing back. He went 2 for 5 with a double and an RBI over his last 7 games, a 344 batting average, 2 homers, 8 RBI, 1 steal. The expected numbers for Volpe, not that that's everything. So I don't want to overvalue that, but the expected batting average and the expected slug, they're not good. They're not good for Volpe. So if you are someone who believes in those numbers, this might be your last chance to sell high on him. Scott, what do you think about buying or selling either of those names?
Look, I would have said buy low on Matt Olson all along. I still think he's going to perform like a second rounder at worst rest of the way.
What's crazy is his average exit velocity is actually higher this year than it was last year.
Yeah. And yeah, looks like he's about to get going. I'm not even sure you could pull it off after the game he just had, but
I'm not sure either, honestly.
It's worth a try. Volpe, he's been kind of a tough one because there are some things I really like about him, and then there are some things I don't. And I kind of get the hunch he's going to be a player who outperforms his expected stats. But obviously I can't guarantee that. There's not enough of a track record to say so. I like that he walks a lot. I like that he runs a lot. He hasn't been stealing bases lately, but it's not like that's something that keeps at a steady pace over the course of the year. I guess if I told you Anthony Volpe is going to perform like we were expecting Andres Jimenez to perform the rest of the way, would you want to hold? Because that doesn't seem far-fetched.
I would hold, and I think I am buying. For the most part, I am buying what Anthony Volpe has done so far, the adjustments that he's made this season. He is the plate discipline is much improved. The zone contact has been great. Swinging strike rate is way down. He's hitting to all fields more. He's hitting more ground balls, which again, that affects the power. But these are the things that I think you want to see from a speedy type leadoff hitter, which is what Anthony Volpe is right now. So for the most part, I am buying. If you could sell high, I don't know, to the highest degree, like turn him into Bo Bichette. I mean, that's like a trainer, right?
Well, that's as much a buy low as anything. Now, let me see so Volpe to this point in points leagues is 7th at shortstop.
That's great.
So, I mean, if you could find a way to turn him into Francisco Lindor, obviously it would require giving up more than.
But that I think that's the right idea. Like if you have Volpe and I don't know, just an excess pitcher that's overperforming, like a Reese Olson or something, like I don't know, throw it out there. You can try.
Yeah, I'm not sure Reese Olson would get it done.
Probably not.
But look, here's a great offer: Anthony Volpe and Jose Barrios for Francisco Lindor.
I love it. Yeah, try it out. I think you could do that for Corey Seager. You could try to buy low on Corey Seager. You can, to some extent, Bo Bichette. Maybe might still be able to get O'Neal Cruz because the overall numbers still don't look great yet, but obviously he's coming around too. So, I would try on any of those things. But for the most part, I think I am buying into what Anthony Volpe has been doing. Hey, real quick, let's run through some quick questions here. Starting pitcher edition, and Nick Pivetta looked much better in his second start back from the IL. He was up against Tampa Bay, 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks. What I noticed is that in 2 starts back, he's throwing his fastball a lot more. Typically, we want Nick Pivetta to throw his breaking pitches. Is there a chance that he's not throwing the breaking pitches as much because he was dealing with an elbow injury? This requires some kind of like galaxy brain thinking, Scott, but what do you think of my hypothesis here?
Maybe, but what I've noticed is that he's basically ditched the cutter. He normally throws at 21%, and I didn't get an exact count, but he hardly threw it in this start. He went from 21% to he might as well not even have it. And if more fastballs are taking the place of that cutter, that's probably a good thing because the batting average against on that cutter for Nick Pivetta is .438. So cut it out, get it out of here. If it means more fastballs, great. I was encouraged by what I saw from Nick Pivetta today.
Hey, real quick. Chris Sale continues his great start to the season. He was up against the Cubs where he threw 7 shutout innings, 2 hits, 0 walks, 9 strikeouts, had 15 swinging strikes in this one. Did notice the velocity was down around 1.4 miles per hour on all of his main pitches here, but he has allowed a total of 2 earned runs over his last 4 starts combined. Is Chris Sale back, Scott? This looks like the best version of Chris Sale since 2018. That's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things to like about Chris Sale in the amount of time we saw him last year, but obviously the ERA ended up on the high side. I've been a Chris Sale believer for a long time throughout all the injuries, and so I am quite pleased with what we're seeing, and I have nothing negative to point out, except, oh, maybe he gets hurt again just because he's gotten hurt so much over the past 4 years. A wide variety of ailments, many of them not even being like standard baseball injuries, just really fluky things happening to Chris Sale, which is why I'm hopeful that he does stay healthy. But it's not common for any pitcher to stay healthy. And so if Chris Sale falls into that, I think a lot of people are going to be regretting, feeling like they should have known better, I guess. So that's the only negative thing I could say about Sale. But overall, me personally, I'd just be happy to sit back and enjoy the ride. I'm treating him as a top 20 starting pitcher. Maybe he needs to be even treated as higher than that, because with the Braves offense backing him, with him getting 11 Ks per 9, he looks like an ace. And, the Braves locked him up for 3 years. If he can have 3 great years with them, he's probably back on a Hall of Fame trajectory. So I'm sure he's motivated to do that.
I agree completely. And there are arguments, like you said, for selling high while Chris Sale is healthy. But my pushback, and I'll say the same thing about Jared Jones, who might have an innings cap at some point this season. Give me the bullets, the healthy bullets, these awesome pit starts while I can get them, while these guys are healthy. And if they go down, I'll figure it out when that happens. But the way these guys are pitching right now, just take whatever you can get and continue to roll with them. I don't think I would be looking to sell on either of those guys, Chris Sale or Jared Jones.
Especially since there seems to be such pitching surplus right now. And it's not a huge amount of pitchers that we have total confidence in. It's just ones that look really interesting and we feel like they need to be on our roster. So if they were to go down, whether you're talking about Sale or Jared Jones or Tyler Glass now, I'd say the same thing about him.
Yep.
You'll probably have a way to make up for that loss. In the meantime, they're clearly setting your team apart at that position. They're totally bankable, high-end outcomes every time, virtually. And I think you just need to enjoy it.
Hey, real quick, Hunter Green, 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts at the Arizona Diamondbacks. The velocity was back up to normal after his previous start when the velocity was down. And all of a sudden, Hunter Green has a 3.27 ERA, a 1.18 whip. He's doing a much better job limiting hard contact this season. Scott, is this the best version of Hunter Green that we have seen yet?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not convinced that he's going to sustain it. But because what is he doing differently? He is throwing his fastball and his slider the same amount as last year. That third pitch that was hyped up this spring hasn't really manifested. The shape of the fastball and slider is basically the same as last year. Well, you know what? That's not true. He is getting better movement on both of those pitches. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that, but I would be a little fearful of regression from Green, just given his history.
Hey, real quick, and I think we can make this one really quick. Jack Leiter, his career is off to an awful start. He's made 3 starts in the majors. He's got a 16.39 ERA, a 2.57 whip. Would you be looking to buy low in Dynasty on Jack Leiter?
Probably not. I didn't have him as a top 100 prospect coming in. His minor league career has mostly been bad, and I think the odds are against him coming through as a difference maker in fantasy. And most dynasty leagues aren't as deep as the ones we play in, and there's a good chance Jack Leiter's just on waivers in them.
Let's get into the leftovers, and we will run through 3 pitchers here. Carlos Rodon has a quality start in 4 of his past 5 outings. This one at the Minnesota Twins. 6 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, 14 swinging strikes on 102 pitches. He did allow a lot of hard contact in this start, but over Rodon's last 5 outings, it's a 3.07 ERA, a 0.92 whip, 31 strikeouts to just 3 walks. The control has really improved for Rodon during the stretch. Logan Gilbert turned in a quality start, but wasn't his best. 6 2/3, 3 runs allowed, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts, still had 18 swinging strikes in that one. The control has gone the opposite way for Logan Gilbert. He has 3+ walks in 3 of his last 5. And Sonny Gray, 2 rough outings in a row. He was at the Angels, 6 innings, 5 runs, still had 9 strikeouts with 16 swinging strikes. Anything to add on Sonny Gray, Logan Gilbert, and Carlos Rodon?
Yeah, Rodon looks great. The slider has been effective for a long stretch now, enough that he's actually getting a better whiff rate on it than he got during his ace years in 2021 and 2022. So I don't think he's an ace now, but I think he's a number 4 for your fantasy team in all likelihood. So I feel good about where Carlos Rodon's going. You know, Logan Gilbert was obviously pitching over his head to start the year, but he's good. He's just not. I don't think he's going to continue being ace level for you. Sonny Gray, same thing. I could say the same thing about him. Certain amount of regression was inevitable for those two, Gilbert and Gray, and I think you just have to be cognizant of that. But I'm not seeing any like red flags here that would suggest that their poor performances recently are going to be a long-term issue.
Some hitting leftovers. Josh Lowe hit his first home run of the season. He went 2 for 4 with a walk and that homer. He is 8 for 25 early on. That's a .320 batting average. Giancarlo Stanton has 3 home runs in his past 6 games. He went 2 for 5 with his 9th home run on the season. Alex Bregman starting to get going 2 days in a row, 2 for 4 with his 4th home run. He has 3 homers in the past 2 games. Josh Naylor, 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe. His 12th home run, his 3rd steal of the year. And Shohei Ohtani had a big game, 3 for 5 with his 12th home run of the season. Some bullpen updates for the Nationals in game 1 of their doubleheader. Kyle Finnegan allowed 2 hits, but struck out 1 for his 13th save. For the Tigers, Jason Foley pitched a scoreless 9th with the game tied. Alex Lang allowed a hit and an unearned run in the 10th. He took his 3rd loss of the season. For the Marlins, Tanner Scott pitched a scoreless 9th with the game tied. He struck out 2. It was AJ Puck who got the bottom of the 10th with a 1-run lead. He converted his first save of the season. And I want to be very clear, not that people see this and start thinking, whoa, AJ Puck is the closer now again. Tanner Scott had pitched the 9th, and he's still on the team. So as long as Tanner Scott is there and pitching relatively well, I do think he's going to remain the closer. So just keep that in mind. For the Brewers, Trevor McGill got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He gave up a solo homer, but struck out 2 for his 5th save. He remains just 40% rostered. That number still feels like it needs to be higher for Trevor McGill. For the Guardians, Emmanuel Clase walked 1, but picked up his 12th save. For the A's, Mason Miller tossed 2 scoreless innings across the 8th and 9th. He struck out 5. He's so ridiculous. I love you, Mason Miller. For the Astros, Josh Hader threw 2 scoreless across the 9th and 10th. He struck out 3 and picked up his 2nd win. For the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley struck out 2 for his 13th save. For the Rockies, with Jalen Beeks unavailable, Tyler Kinley pitched a clean 9th for his 1st save. And for the Royals, James MacArthur recorded the final 4 outs. He gave up 1 run. He struck out 3 for his 10th save of the season.
I'm a little worried about James MacArthur, though, that was he's now allowed at least a run in 4 of his last 5 appearances, which is not a trend you want to set as a closer. It hasn't cost the Royals games, at least not many games. So I'm not sure the alarm has been raised yet, but he's not like a conventional closer who approaches triple digits with his fastball and now he's struggling to keep runs off the board. In those deep leagues where saves are scarce, it might be worth putting in a preliminary preemptive pickup for his setup man, whose name I'm forgetting.
John Schreiber.
There it is. I was thinking Schneider, but no, it's Schreiber. John Schreiber. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So far this season, Schreiber has a .90 ERA and a 105 whip, less than a strikeout per inning, but he has pitched pretty well so far with the Royals. To stream or not to stream on Wednesday, and I believe yesterday we said Casey Mize against the Marlins, Robert Gasser against the Pirates. Brandon Pfaadt against the Reds. Taj Bradley is pitching, but he's at the Red Sox.
I like Alec Marsh more than Pfaadt.
Okay.
He's at Seattle. Yeah, I don't love any of them though. Wednesday's not a good day for streaming.
Cole Irvin against the Blue Jays. It's in Camden. That could work.
It could.
Yeah. And then on Thursday, we do have a shorter slate, and don't think I want to use any of these. If I had to choose one, I guess Clark Schmidt at the Twins, but blah.
Oof. Yeah. Light slate. I might say Cooper Criswell against the Rays Thursday. If you're forcing me to pick one, which is what you like to do in this segment.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.